why did I become a teacher in the first place? And I think if we look at the answers to those questions, whatever the answers might be, whether they are that I want to kind of have a better understanding of education, I want to improve the quality of education for my students, whatever the answer you have to those questions, that will uncover your values around education. So we believe very much that teachers should be critically self-reflective and continuously reflect on their practice. And if they do that, they will be able to uncover the beliefs and attitudes, that drive their educational practice. And then they'll be able to articulate those values for themselves, whatever their values are. And in that way, they will know what the qualities that inspire them to bring about change in their life are. So what exactly are values? Well, I think they may be the guiding principles for how we live our lives. They underpin our thoughts and actions. Now, sometimes they might be just at a tacit level, because we may not have kind of articulated them explicitly. They might be very much at a tacit level at the back of our minds somewhere, and only through reflection will we be able to name them for ourselves. So by engaging in self-questioning, critical reflection and so on, then we will be able to make them explicit so that they will be visible to others and to ourselves. And I would see them very much as living values that inform our practice, that we think about them when we're reflecting on our practice. Now, there are various categories of values, really. I suppose we can talk about personal values, values that are personal to ourselves. We can have professional values. Also, we can have ontological values, and they would be to do with our way of being in the world, our relationship with others. So you would see maybe how values such as respect, democracy, inclusion, those kind of values would be important ontological values. We can have epistemological values, which would be to do with our view of knowledge and how knowledge is created, who creates knowledge. And values like dialogue, knowledge creation, all of those kind of values would be epistemological ones. And we can have educational values, which would frame our approach to teaching, to pedagogy, to curriculum and so on. And maybe values like cooperation, collaboration, collegial attitude, all of those would be important educational values. Because whether they're to do with our work with our students, our work with colleagues or so on, they would be the important values in that area. So sometimes we find that we are not living to our values. We might say, that we hold a particular value, and then suddenly realize that we are not living to that value. For example, you might say you valued equality, and you might suddenly realize actually I'm not living that value in my practice. If you're in an area maybe where there's a lot of emphasis on students achieving the best that they can, and you might have a value about treating all the students equally, but maybe the institution you're teaching in might value the higher achievers better. So then your value of equality may not be realized in your practice. And that is what Jack Whitehead has coined the phrase a living contradiction to explain that, where you hold one value but find yourself not living to it. He says you're a living contradiction. He has written reams about that in all his writing. I think you would also find it on YouTube. If you look for him on YouTube, he explains what he means by that. But he also says that when you find yourself in that situation, you will feel the need to change your practice to one that is more commensurate with your espoused values. So I just want to tell you a little anecdote now about a time when I experienced myself as a living contradiction and what I learned from that, because it was a great learning experience for me. I worked at one stage as a resource teacher for travellers when there was such a position. Then they were taken away during the bad times, the recession, and I think they're still gone. Does anybody know, are there still resource teachers for travellers now? They're long gone, right. Well, I had the opportunity to work in that position at one stage. And one of the values that I claimed to hold at the time was that I respected the traveller culture. And I firmly believed, that was my value and that I was living to it. So I was working with the traveller children and providing learning support to those that needed it, because some of them had a lot of numeracy and literacy problems. And one method I had for working was, if I was doing reading with a traveller child, and if they'd made errors, I wouldn't interrupt the flow of the lesson, but I had a little notebook and I would write down the errors that they made and then discuss them with them afterwards. So this particular day, when a child pronounced told as towelled, I began to write it down in my notebook, and she said to me very indignantly, "I knew that word, that's how we say it." So at the time, I wasn't able to reflect in action, as Sean says, and I just said to her, oh, that's fine, I won't count that as a mistake then, just to keep her happy. But afterwards, when I reflected, as I don't know if Sean or Edward said earlier about after the lesson, the importance of the reflection. So when I was reflecting on it afterwards, I kind of thought, gosh, where was my respect for the traveller culture in what I did? And I knew that was how they pronounced words. I mean, I had enough dealings with the traveller children, and I knew they said towelled and howled and things like that, and I knew it was part of their culture, but here I was certainly not living to my value of their culture. So I said, well, I certainly need to be more aware of my values and ensure that I'm living to them in future. So there was a lot of learning in that from me, in other ways as well. I actually tried to justify it to myself by saying, well, I really wanted them to fit in their class, in the class they were in. So I wanted them to be able to pronounce the words the same as everybody else, so they wouldn't stand out as being different. But then when I reflected on that, I said, that's only making matters worse, because now you are trying to integrate them into the system, make them fit the system, instead of trying to get the system to change to accommodate them. So there was huge learning around that, a lot more that I don't want to go into now to take forever. But I think it was at that point that I realised values are not just abstract, concepts out there in the ether somewhere, that I can maybe call on now and again. But they are actually living values that should be obvious in my educational practice, should be visible to me and to everybody else as well. Because I felt that I was giving that traveller child the lesson or the message that her culture was not valued in the educational system. So I think we really need to reflect on our actions and to maintain an awareness of our values at all times, really. So if I feel that I have a right to uphold my values, well then I need to recognise that right in others as well. They are entitled to have their values also. And sometimes maybe that might be a cause of tension, like, if they're competing values, well then whose values kind of are more important or whose should be considered. So maybe one way might be to look at these criteria. In our book there, that you have the flyers for on your seat, we have a discussion on values, and drawing on the work of Whitehead and Brookfield and others, we decided that these might be good criteria for assessing your values and see are they worth holding. So maybe if your values are life-affirming, if they have a positive influence on your life, are they sustainable, like something that you can hold kind of long-term rather than something that you might have one day and not have the next? And are they for the common good? Are they going to be good for others, not just for yourself, but have a good impact on others as well? So are values important for teachers? Well, as we can see, the Code of Professional Practice that the Teaching Council has brought out for all teachers, and that we all teachers subscribe to. They outline certain values that are important that every teacher should display in their practice. The code of practice, I think, was revised in 2016, but the clip I have there is from the 2012 one. I think they're a bit easier to read on that one. And the four core values that they mentioned there are respect, care, integrity, and trust. But it's not just those four values, because under those headings you will see that they have a whole lot of other values as well. Let's say, for example, I won't read them all, but under respect you will see that it means respect for spiritual and cultural values, like my value around the traveller culture, diversity, social justice, freedom, democracy. So there's a whole lot of other values included under each of those. And I think those values apply not just to primary teachers, secondary teachers, but everybody, I think, involved, in teaching in any area. So are values important for researchers? Certainly in any action research approach, they are of the utmost importance. And if we think of the fact that teaching is a value-laden profession, when we're dealing with children all the time, values are very important to the job that we do. And if you're carrying out research, particularly with children, ethical issues are really important, and they would include values. When you have to kind of respect the people that you're conducting research with, well, that would be part of the ethical issues that you need to consider. And also, when you're articulating your values, can help to remove maybe any bias. If there's a danger that you might be accused of bias in your research, well, if you're upfront about your values and explain why you have a particular approach to things, that can help to eliminate the possibility of bias. And also then Jack Whitehead would suggest that values can be formed into the critical standards of judgment for assessing your research. So, for example, if you claim that social justice is one of your values, you could turn that into a criteria and say, well, I want my research to be judged on whether or not I have provided evidence of acting in a just way, that I have acted in a just way in my practice. Sorry. And values can be important in learning communities, whatever the learning community is, whether it's just a group like our NEARI group or whatever other learning community we belong to, because we are involved in collaborative endeavours. We need to have a cooperative ethos, so those would be the values of our communities. Respect for the views and contributions of others. That would be very important, and that everybody would feel that they had a part to play. And collegiality, and then dialogue and professional conversations. They would be the main values that we would associate with learning communities. So that's all I'm going to say now, but just leave you with a question. What do you think is the nature of the relationship between values and research as a lived activity? And when you get a moment at some stage, you have your little post-its there, you might kind of just jot down any ideas you have on that. Right, so thank you very much for your attention.